Welcome to the Plinsey Grange. Today we're going to be planting dahlias on this beautiful day. Now, it's a little early to plant dahlias outside, but I was at the Flower and Garden Show and I just had to have these single dahlias. And I can actually plant these in a pot ahead of time and plant them outside or keep them in the pot if the pot is big enough. Since they're singles, they're smaller plants and I can actually leave them in a pot and right here on the patio where I am. So that'll be fun. So first we're going to take a look at what a dahlia looks like. Some of you may not be familiar with dahlias. You may have seen the flowers, but you've never seen the tuber. And I say tuber. Now this is going to be a little bit confusing. So it looks, you say, well, tuber, what's the difference between a tuber and a bulb? Well, a tuber is an enlarged root, and a bulb is enlarged scales or leaves. So if you think of an onion, those are scales. That is a bulb. This is actually a tuber. Now if you can imagine, this was divided from a larger plant. So if the top of my hand is the crown, some of the roots enlarge like my fingers. And so this one is kind of like my thumb. And the eye comes from where the crown is, because that's where the growing point is on this. Now I'll show you, or we'll compare it to a tuber. I have here a fingerling potato. And this has eyes all along it. So it's a little bit kind of tuber, but it's still a tuber because it's actually from the root system and not from leaves or any above ground parts of the plant. And we compare it superficially to this narcissus bulb, but as you can see, this has scales. These are dried up leaves or scales that form the bulb. You can see that this doesn't have any of those. So even though it has the growing point at the top, this is actually a tuber. And you can actually see the eye. You can see they left an eye. So if you ever have your own and you want to divide them yourself, when you cut them off, you always want to make sure there's an eye here, because if it was cut here, you would wind up with no plant. You just have a root and it wouldn't have any way of sprouting a new plant. So now we are going to show you how to pot it up. Okay, so that's a nice sized pot for a small. You could go a little bit bigger, but larger dahlias, the large growing ones, are better in the ground rather than this. So what we're going to do is we want to plant this about 4 inches below the soil level. And usually it's safest, sometimes if you don't see the eye, is to plant it just on its side. So this is the way we're going to plant it. We're going to plant it on its side with the eye facing up, since we see where the eye is. You could plant it like this, but I'm going to go with the direction of the eye in this case. So we get some soil. I'm going to fill her up so that I leave a little space. So you can see I leave about 4 inches. I'm going to probably have to dig it down a little bit to get it below the soil line. Now, fertilizer. Since this is a soilless mix, we're going to want to fertilize. And I recommend using vegetable fertilizer because you don't want too high nitrogen. As you can see, the first number is nitrogen, second number is phosphorus, third number is potash. First number is half the other two. So it's a low nitrogen fertilizer. High nitrogen fertilizer on dahlias tends to make them grow leggy and doesn't promote flowers as much. So you get these really lush, leggy plants with less flowers. So we use vegetable fertilizer. So I'm just going to put a handful. This is organic, so I don't have to worry about burning the roots. And I'm going to pour some in and then just work it in to the soil below, because this is where most of the root system will be for the dahlia. Get that nice and worked in. Okay, and now I'm going to place the dahlia in, and then we cover it up. There we go. Let's see. And we press soil down nice and firm. Shake it a little bit. And then the final touch will be to water it. Water it in. Since I will be bringing it into my sunroom, which is behind me. And while I'm allowing that to soak in, let me tell you about one of the major pests. Yes, slugs is one of the major pests for your dahlias. So I recommend you get an iron phosphate type of slug bait, which is natural. It's iron phosphate is something that will break down and will also kill your snails. So it's safe, and if you want to use it, just sprinkle some out around the plant, and you can see they're pellets. So with that, you're ready to start your own dahlias this year. Until next time, live long and garden.